Hey, what is up guys, and welcome back to the channel. So in today's video I'm bringing you some brand new F1 22 gameplay. This is basically ranking and finding out which is the fastest of the brand new 8 supercars added to the game. If you don't know, basically F1 22 added this kind of like F1 live feature, and along came brand new supercars. It's kind of weird seeing something other than like Formula cars in a Formula 1 game. But it's a pretty awesome addition. Sadly, we can only use them in like time trial and the little challenges that come with them. But yeah, pretty cool addition. And I thought I'd kind of test them all out and see where they actually rank over a full lap. So let's get into it and find out. So sadly, taking up our final spot in the test is the Aston Martin Vantage F1 edition. Personally, I think this car is absolutely awesome. I absolutely love the way it looks. I absolutely love the way it sounds. Guess the only complaint for me would be that little spoiler at the back. It looks kind of out of place for this kind of car, but you know, it's overall a very, very good car. Some of the sort of pros to note with this car was that sort of going through the corners and coming out of the corners, it felt very stable, even with sort of traction turned down. Absolutely awesome, you know, sound, like when you're off the throttle and it's crackling and popping. Yeah, it just felt very, very cool. The handling wise, I mean, overall these cars are kind of weird to get used to. Obviously when you're playing this game you'll mostly be driving the Formula cars, so like F1, F2, but you know, mostly F1, which are insane downforce, even with sort of the new ground effect cars we've got. So it's like really apparent when you go into the supercars that they're a little bit weird to get used to, but they, you know, they're not too bad. You know, a few laps in and you're feeling pretty confident with them. But yeah, I mean, it was a great car. Like I said, I felt very comfortable driving it. It just seemed like a little bit off the pace, and I think that's mostly down to its straight line speed. It did seem, you know, quite a bit off the pace of the other cars, the other supercars we've got, including obviously like the Mercedes, the other Aston Martin that we have. But personally, I rate this car. I do really like it, even though sadly it comes in the last spot in this test. So we're just about to go over the line here. Let's see what time we got overall, and it is a 1 minute 42.008. So an okay lap. I do feel like with some more practice, you know, over a few months, you could easily get that down. But not a bad lap, but a great feeling car. So 7th place now, and sadly it's another Aston Martin. This time it's the Aston Martin DB11 V12 AMR. What can I really say? I personally feel like this, for me, is probably the weakest car, and the one that had the least amount of, you know, fun driving. It felt like the previous Aston Martin, just much bulkier. It didn't feel too good through the corners, and it didn't feel too good on your sort of exit. But I kind of expected that. I kind of had this little feeling in the back of my head that this would probably be my least favourite to drive. But I guess it's kind of personal preference. Overall, for our lap, you know, it's okay. There's nothing majorly stand out with it. It just seemed to have a bit of like a higher top speed than the previous Aston Martin. But definitely, you know, without all them, you know, crazy bit of downforce and kit that the previous one had on the Vantage, it really does sort of feel a bit off through the corners. Definitely not the grip. You know, the grip's not always there when you need it. Probably, like I said, you know, weakest one for me. I didn't have the most fun really driving this one, and you know, if I had to recommend which order you buy them in, I'd definitely recommend getting this one last off. You know, but again, some of you might absolutely love this car, and I completely respect that opinion, but for me it's just nothing special really, and definitely the weakest of the 8 supercars that we got added to the game. So as you can see, we're about to go across the line now. What lap time are we going to get? Is it going to be close? It's a 141.303. Not bad, but I think most of sort of its time was made up on the straights. So like I said, in my opinion, maybe pick this one up last, but some of you may absolutely love this car. Personally, I'm not, like I said, the biggest fan of it. It was okay, but not perfect. So 6th place now, it's the Mercedes AMG Gtr Pro. So I absolutely loved this car. When I looked at it, I thought, oh, well, the Black Series is in here, so, you know, why should I really pick this one over it? And, you know, okay, it's kind of that way. Like, the Black Series is an absolutely awesome car just by the way it feels, the way it drives. It's really aggressive looking, and this kind of felt like it's, you know, little baby brother. But I actually had a lot of fun driving this car. It felt much quicker than the Aston Martins, and just the way it kind of handled corners and the way it, you know, carried its speed through was really pleasantly surprised. Like, I didn't think too much to it at first. Like, I thought it was just going to be kind of like the previous car we had, the DB11, but yeah, pleasantly surprised. It handles really well. Definitely an improvement, and again, that might be down to maybe some of, you know, the aero on the car. When you kind of see the picture in the kind of like showroom bit, you kind of think, yeah, well, why would I pick that over, you know, some of these other cars? It kind of looks quite bulky and quite chunky, and admittedly it does feel kind of bulky, but it still feels like it's got plenty of grip, and it's able to kind of carry much more speed around those corners. No issues there. I had an absolute blast driving it. Probably one of the more like fun cars to drive, even if it isn't, you know, the quickest. But like I said, in my opinion, I definitely, you know, kind of look into getting this one pretty early on, just because it will kind of catch you by surprise, and it is an absolute blast to, you know, just put laps in with. And as you can see, we've come over the line with a 141.111. So an improvement, not a massive improvement or a massive jump, but, you know, an absolute awesome and fun lap. So for me, this is the surprise of the bunch, the Ferrari Roma. Personally, because I thought it'd be quite far off the pace. It's more of sort of a luxury Grand Touring car than it is sort of a supercar. I did kind of expect this to be, you know, bottom, to be honest. But it actually turned out to be surprisingly drivable. Very, you know, controllable through the corners. It felt good on exit. It felt good. It didn't sort of spin its tires up too much, even with the lowered traction. If I have to kind of, you know, recommend a car to get started with and get a feel for the supercars while you're kind of building that confidence up, I'd definitely recommend this Ferrari Roma. And again, it's, you know, a pretty rare car to see in racing games. I know it's a pretty recent car, and I kind of hope we kind of see this car in other races in the future. But for me, for a first time driving this car in any game, it did feel very good, and I was very pleasantly surprised. Personally, I love the look of it. Again, it's one of the more bulky looking cars, I'd guess. Does feel like it probably would be absolutely nowhere, but again, for me, this is kind of the surprise of the bunch. I really didn't expect it to, you know, take up 5th place overall. But like I said, I mean, just the, you know, the drivability of the car, especially early days, kind of made up for that. Again, through the corners, absolutely awesome, and definitely, you know, the exit speeds. Top end, it didn't feel that quick down the straight, so that's just kind of something to note if, you know, you don't really like the slower feeling cars. And it does feel quite bulky when you're driving it, but it's just one of those things. But as you can see, we're about to go over the line, and we're going to get a 139.910. So there you go. Pretty decent improvement. Like I said, very good car overall, and I definitely recommend getting your teeth into this one. So 4th place now, we have probably one of my favourite cars in this game, and one of my favourite cars in pretty much any racing game it appears in. This is the Mercedes AMG Black Series. So basically, I'd say the more aggressive, bigger brother to the Pro version. Definitely has the looks to it, you know, that huge spoiler, and obviously the rear diffuser and such. This is the one that the F1 safety car is based on, and if you didn't know, I've already tested both safety cars against each other, and the Black Series pretty much will wipe the floor with the Aston Martin Vantage safety car. So yeah, it's kind of true what the drivers say. It is much slower. I think it was like 4 or 5 seconds off the pace round Austria compared to obviously the Black Series. Overall, like I said, I mean, it's kind of obvious it's an amazing car. Very good through the corners, but on exit, if you're just a bit too sort of you know, if you rush onto the throttle a little bit too much, it will spin its wheels and it will try to kick its back end out. It's quite easy to catch though, so that aero coming in pretty, you know, pretty handy, but awesomely quick on the straights. And again, like, you know, getting through the corner and getting into the corner felt absolutely fine. It's just on exit, if you're, you know, a little bit too twitchy, there is a high chance that it's going to try and spit its back end out, and then it's all down to you to kind of catch it. So overall, it did feel like a very quick lap. Again, although it's quite bulky, that aero really coming in, you know, handy over a full lap as we're about to cross the line, and it's going to be a 1:38.106. So a very quick lap time and a massive improvement over the Pro Edition. So I would definitely recommend getting this car early on. So now on to our top three. So if you haven't guessed, there's going to be 2 McLarens in the top 3 and 1 more Ferrari. We'll get onto those ones in a bit, but this one here is the McLaren Artura. If I butchered that pronunciation, then I am very sorry. But this is a car that I don't think I've seen in another racing game, so it's pretty cool to kind of see it in all its glory in this game. And you know, it's got that typical McLaren look, but I was very pleasantly, you know, surprised with just the performance of this thing. I feel like with these first 3 cars, the jump in kind of performance, handling, top speed, and, you know, how agile they feel is massive compared to the previous cars. It did feel like a really huge jump up from, you know, the previous supercars. So definitely look into getting this one. I had a lot of fun with this car, and personally, although there's going to be another McLaren, I would actually recommend getting this one over it. Yes, it is not as quick, but it is a lot more controllable. So if you want to get used to like the much quicker cars, this is definitely the one to go for over, I guess, the other 2 really. But yeah, overall an awesome lap. Felt very quick, and the main thing for me that I noticed was just the acceleration and the way it downshifts. It was very quick to go back through its gears, and you know, down them gears, up them gears. Very stable through the corners, and actually not too twitchy on exit, which kind of was surprising, because some of these cars do feel very twitchy if you're a little bit too early on the throttle. But it didn't feel too bad at all. As we go across the line, it's a 1:35.835, so, you know, a pretty huge leap there. So that just tells you how quick these first 3 cars really are, and just how well they drive. So second place comes along, and I was kind of surprised by this. It might just be my driving style personally, but this is the McLaren 720S. So this is probably the most extreme looking car of all the supercars we've got. One thing to note, it is not easy to drive. I found it quite difficult to kind of get used to, just the violent acceleration on it. And through the corners it's okay, and on the downshifts it's okay, but definitely exiting the corner, you put a bit too much throttle on and this thing is going to try and, you know, it's going to try and spit you out and throw you in the barrier. I did have a few runs at this, and it took me a while to get a clean lap in. Very odd feel to the car, very, you know, aggressive, and it's mostly just to do with kind of your throttle control. So if you've got excellent throttle control, you might find it, you know, much easier than I did. It took me a couple of goes to get a full lap in, and it was mostly kind of exiting the corner and just kind of like you lose a bit of traction, and it was quite difficult to catch. It is quite a twitchy car, so again, it feels like the previous McLaren. It's, I guess, much twitchier than any of the other cars. Like you can see, they're just slipping coming out that corner and having to catch it. That's kind of what I mean by it being, you know, twitchy and quite violent on the acceleration, and then it's kind of all down to you to kind of catch it. This is what probably, you know, possibly cost it, that little moment there was probably cost it first place. But again, this is all about drivability, handling, acceleration, just how easy it is for a driver to kind of get used to these cars. As you can see, 1:35.219, so a very quick lap yet again. Really enjoyable. So let's get on to first place. And obviously that only left 1 car left. This is the Ferrari F8, an absolutely awesome looking car. I mean, for me, Ferrari have always spat out some of the most beautiful cars, and I feel like this one will rank really highly. over the years. I feel like it'd be a pretty, timeless design. Where some supercars feel quite dated after a few years, I feel like this one will really hold up. Very modern looking. So let's talk about actually the performance of the car. The downshifts on this car are absolutely perfect. So if you're carrying some speed and you need to get down them gears quick, very, very good at that. Going into corners, absolutely fine. Going through the corners, felt great. And even on exit, okay, it does like to kind of spin up a little bit, but it's definitely not as aggressive as the previous one, the 720S. So very, very stable overall, feels very quick, feels very agile. And yeah, even here I didn't get the perfect lap in, but it just felt perfect. Even when, like, you can see the back end kicks out a bit, it's very catchable, very controllable, and for me it just makes it the perfect supercar in this game, and definitely, worthy of first place. Yes, it may not feel quickest overall, but definitely when you put it all together and over a lap, and you think about how well it feels, it's, to me, no surprise that it kind of went in and kind of took the win from all the other supercars that are added to F122. As we go across the line, it is a 135.203, so very, very close between this and the McLaren. I feel like the McLaren may have pipped here if I didn't have that little moment out of one of the corners, but it's all about drivability as well. So that is all safety cars and all supercars tested in F122, and here is your winner from the supercars. It is the Ferrari F8. So absolutely awesome, a great addition to F122, and I can't wait to see if they do more of this over the coming years. So that is going to be it for today's videos. Thank you for everybody that has watched this video. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. It really helps me out, and a massive thank you to those that have stuck around since day one. Take care, guys. Thank you for watching again. Cheers.